Awesome. Okay. I have an abbreviated disclaimer script to read today, which you can expect to hear at the beginning of every meeting still. I'm communicating today in my official capacity on behalf of FedRAMP at the General Services Administration. We hold these meetings to enhance transparency between industry and FedRAMP so that we can open a dialogue and share new developments. Nothing that we share constitutes business advice, and any reference in this conversation to any specific commercial product or the use of any corporation name is for the information and convenience of the public and does not constitute endorsement, recommendation, or favoring by GSA. Okay. I'm going to go over a little bit of housekeeping. So, plenty of people have registered for this meeting, so we've turned off the ability to unmute yourself so we don't have to chase down interruptions. But discussion and collaboration can still take place on the GitHub discussions board created for this working group. The link is on the screen. Additionally, from now on, the Q&A is open. And today we have Pete Waterman here, Dan Chandler, and Ben Fowler, and they will all be answering any 20X related questions. So you can feel free to post any of those into the Zoom Q&A. And for asynchronous participants, feel free to post questions and thoughts to our working group discussion forum. With that said, today's agenda, we're going to, again, just recap the working group shakeup. We're going to talk about some of the stats overall on GitHub discussions this past couple weeks. We're going to go over phase 1 pilot updates. We're going to have that Q&A panel that I mentioned, and then we're going to talk next steps. Awesome. So, for those of you who may have missed it and think that you're in the automating assessment community working group, surprise, this is now the 20X community working group. And it's a consolidated version of automating assessment, continuous reporting, and applying existing frameworks, all in one unified community working group. We will meet bi-weekly on Wednesdays, and if you made it here, congratulations. It's the very first 20X Unified Community Working Group meeting. As before, the intent is to meet for 30 minutes up to an hour, and the meetings are going to be touch points to provide updates on progress, both within this group and the greater FedRAMP 20X community. All meetings will be recorded, and the recordings will be posted on YouTube. And a lot of times these meetings will be a place where you can get your questions answered in the Q&A in Zoom. So the majority of engagement and work will still take place in our GitHub repository discussion forum because one of our guiding principles is for all of our work to take place in public with maximum transparency. And working in GitHub discussions ensures that all community members, both present and future, will have access to our work. I'm going to pass it off to John now to talk a little bit about the participation in the forums this past couple weeks.
Thank you, Kylie. Well, since we last met, all discussions from the 4 legacy working groups have been transferred to our new consolidated FedRAMP discussion forum. By doing this, we really hope that's now easier for everyone to see what we need your feedback on the most for 20X and Rev 5. So there's less confusion and duplication of effort. We see that many of you have already jumped into our updated forums, and there's been a lot of great feedback so far. As of yesterday, the 20X discussion forum includes 10 individual discussion topics and 46 top-level comments. And just as a reminder, the GitHub discussion forums will continue to be the best place to get your questions answered, both for 20X and Rev 5. And if you're new to the working group, want to participate, we provide a link to our discussion forum at the bottom of this slide. Next slide. And we want to thank you all for the great feedback on the RFCs. The RFC that is most relevant to the 20X pilot is the KSI standard, which is now closed for comment. We expect to release the final KSI shortly after we get approval from the FedRAMP board. And about a week ago, we began accepting submissions for authorization. We've gotten 2 submissions for authorization, one just yesterday and one last week, and 9 draft submissions in total. Our goal is to start issuing 20X authorizations later this month, but we're also still accepting and reviewing draft submissions. So this is our most flexible phase, So feel free to be creative in your approach and make your submissions public so everyone can learn and collaborate together. We're using the phase one submissions to better inform more specific standards and guidance in future phases. And because much of the activity in the community discussion boards have been related to the 20X submissions, we're now going to have a brief Q&A roundtable led by Pete, Dan, and Ben. Next slide.
Before we jump in, I do want to clarify one point on John's last slide, which is the KSIs have been released for the pilot. During the pilot phase, those are the KSIs that people can use to get FedRAMP Low authorization. Before we finalize those for wide release and permanent FedRAMP authorization, there will be another round of editing, tweaking, tuning based on what we learn in the pilot. Those will go through a formal approval process and will get released at that time.
Thanks, Pete.
All
All right,
right.
so we have 176 participants and no questions yet, but we did go into that really fast. I'm going to seed some questions then to the team as we wait for some of these to pop in. So far we've had a couple of formal submissions and a number of draft submissions. I'm wondering to the folks that have been looking through those, what are some kind of just high level vibes that you've got from what we've seen so far? Ben, how about you?
Well, from what I've seen so far, there seems to be sort of a mix of CSPs who are really want to engage with the pilot program and offer solutions. And then there are others who are sort of looking for more guidance from us. And I just want to reiterate that if you see any sort of what you may perceive as I don't know, vagueness or wiggle room to embrace that, to sort of meet us in the middle or even a little bit further than that, and offer your own solutions to anything you might find as like an opportunity where you don't think maybe we've made things as clear as they could be. I would really encourage CSPs to fill in those gaps and tell us what you think is the best way to meet KSIs.
I guess I can tee up a question. So, can one of you guys sort of explain the why behind why machine readable evidence is important and like why we want the links and the embedded evidence to be machine readable instead of just like the way that things have always been done?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, okay,
sorry.
Ben, yeah, you go.
Well, well, I mean, machine readable is just the best way that the information can be, uh, intercepted and interpreted by whatever GRC or tools that any agency has at their disposal. It's just it's like instead of giving us, a house, we want you to give us that house in the form of bricks that anyone else can build on their own and see how it looks with their own architect and so on. So it's the reason why OSCAL was created. That's why we by NIST, that's why we want machine readable results. Just so we have too many agencies to be able to build to ask CSPs to cater to, by whatever each agency wants their information in. So machine readable is the way that agencies themselves to get information the way they want.
Yeah, I mean, I think I could summarize kind of a few points related to this as well. So the intent is for this to be continuous technical validation in the long run, and you can't do that if you're writing stuff into a document. We need a machine to look at it and do it. And the other side of this, the whole point of the FedRAMP 20X approach is to have a machine do the majority of the work to both decrease the costs and decrease the effort, both on the generation, creation, the assessment, the testing, and the review on our side. So if there's not a machine readable package, you're not really saving anybody work. You still got to have humans create it, humans work on it, humans read it. We had a question in the Q&A. I know you are only working on low in the pilot now, but is there a timeline for a possible moderate? and then ultimately high authorizations through the 20x pipeline. Yes, that's exactly correct. We will go moderate, then high. Timelines are flexible based on delivery. Right now, we're expecting the low pilot to go through probably August to September. Then low will become a formal path that has been released for everyone, and we'll start the moderate pilot almost directly after that. We expect moderate pilot likely to be done by December, then open for submissions, and then after that, we go to high. Stay tuned to our website, FedRAMP.gov/20x. Like, we're walking through all of that as we build it. This is not a situation where we are trying to work to a timeline. We are working to delivery and execution of a high quality product. So the speed and the pace at which we deliver will depend on how much participation we have, how effective things are, how much we can keep up with demand, et cetera. So stay tuned, watch out. There's a big reason why we said people that participate in the low will be prioritized for the moderate, because by the time they come back for moderate, we've already seen what they're doing. We know how they're taking the approach. It makes sense, and it'll be a lot easier for us to review it. I think also I'll just add, during the low, we're going to see a lot of generation and creation of tooling and processes to do this. People are learning how to do it and building the products. By the time we get to moderate, you're going to have infrastructure as a service providers that are providing some of this capability. You're going to have third-party authorized GRC tools that are providing some of this capability. So if you're in a cloud service and you don't have a bunch of engineering folks that want to go build and develop a thing to be a custom process, just wait. Wait until the low is done and we figured it out and we have a bunch of people that's built those tools. Then you can adopt that, get in on the moderate pilot, or do low afterwards without even having to mess with the pilot. Can we do Can we do like raise hands? Like, I don't know how much of a hassle it will be to try to. I think we have to take them in the chat for now. Is that right, Kylie?
I think we're not quite prepared to like take live questions, but you can feel free to post them in the Q&A and then we'll answer them. But that could be something that we do in future meetings. Who knows?
All right, let's go to the next one, which is for services that have Rev 5 moderate authorizations. Will there be added advantages to using CSOs that go through the 20x pilot for low? i.e., are those services now acceptable for leveraged authorizations that can be used? Yes, FedRAMP authorized services can be used and leveraged regardless of their authorization. That will help you and agencies get a lot more stuff done. I don't know, Dan, Ben, want to take one of the next ones?
Sure, I can answer one. So there's a question about the digital signature requirement. Is it designed to show integrity, identity, or both? And the answer is both. But it's also, this is a good example of where we don't have a defined solution for this. We're really looking to the community to come up with innovative ideas and solutions that give us an effective way to know that the machine readable data that we're looking at was properly collected, was properly reviewed, and was properly signed off on by a 3PAO. So there's lots of ways that that can be done. We've seen some really innovative ways to do it in the submissions so far, and we're really interested to see what people come up with for.
I'll do the next one. I'll do all of these, but I guess I shouldn't dominate this, right? We'll have John chime in and answer this. I'm curious to see what he's going to say. Will all pilot phases focus primarily on CSOs that implement cloud native solutions, or will other architectures be explored as well?
I mean, as far as I know, in discussions with you, Pete, we're going to basically open this up for everyone. We're not going to, basically rule out any offering type or architecture. So it is open, fair game.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if you think that you have a solution that can demonstrate the KSIs and validate it and prove it and use automated validation, cool. Submit it. Let's see what happens. Realistically, we're focused on cloud native because that's where the tooling, the capability, the defaults exists. It's the easiest thing to assess. So that's where the momentum is, because people can do it fastest. They can do it easiest. If you want to build something to assess something that is not super cloud native and be the groundbreaker there, do it. Later, once we get through the cloud native, as a focus, we'll start revisiting and really pushing on that. But for now, bluntly, we are not explicitly excluding anyone that thinks that they can meet the KSIs using automated validation. Next question. What are you seeing as the biggest win for the FedRAMP PMO and the biggest win for CSPs with the pilot submissions that have come in so far versus the historical path to authorization? I'm going to answer this because this is a very, very important strategic aspect of this project. One, for CSPs, lower costs, simpler, easier, more effective, makes more sense, better. Engineers can do it. Nobody wastes time. You don't have to pay consultants in the long run, tons and tons of money. More importantly, we're building a new cybersecurity process. We're building a new cybersecurity approach that is based on the idea of actually letting technology do the work instead of trying to figure out how to automate this weird old process. As far as the wins for us, that is more cloud services will become available to the federal government. We'll be able to authorize things with program authorizations because we can do a review of a machine assessment in a rapid amount of time, as opposed to spending 50, 100. We did one program authorization that probably cost us close to $500,000. We can't do that for every cloud service ever. So this is going to make it faster, easier for us. That means more things in government. The through line for this pilot is not necessarily exciting what it delivers now or what it delivers in the next 3 months. It's where we go in 2 years when every major infrastructure provider has this stuff set up in a way that you can deploy, activate, use it, and it makes sense, and you like it, and it's helpful. The engineers find it convenient, and the product teams want to deploy and use this approach to security, then everything will just be a lot simpler. The default will give the government better access to commercial systems, and agencies won't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars reviewing this stuff either. So, like, that's a pretty big win. I'm pretty happy with that eventual win. Dan, you're going to answer the next question.
Yeah, so the question was, given that 20x lacks checks for EOs, BODs, et cetera, do you foresee obstacles for agencies accepting 20x authorizations? Which is a good question. I'm going to make it a little bit more broad than that, and answer two different pieces here. So one is, we want to be really clear that the 20x program is not, in our mind, in any way less secure than the Rev 5 program. In fact, we think it's more secure than the Rev 5 program was. And if CSPs or others involved in the project in the community here feel like there's something we're missing, like, definitely we want you to bring that up in the forums. Let's have a discussion about it, and either fix it or expand on it in order to better understand it. Specifically here, I think you bring up another really good point, which is the NIST 853 controls in the traditional Rev 5 process has a lot of pieces of it that really belong to the agency. They're things that the CSP can't really necessarily do because they're things that the agency has to do according to an executive order or a BOD or something like that. So one of the things that we've done in 20X is we've gone through and found those controls in 853 that really don't apply to the CSP. They really apply to the agency, and we've segmented them out so that they're not part of the KSIs that the CSP is looking at. The things that the agency has to do. And we're working on, behind the scenes here, a lot of educational material that we plan to share with agencies that should help them understand what we're doing here and be comfortable with the new KSI model.
Yeah, I'm also going to add in here just a complicated way of thinking about things, but to be clear, executive orders and CISA BODs, they don't apply to commercial companies. They apply to government. And so we're assessing the security of the commercial company and whether or not they provide a feature that allows an agency to meet an agency requirement from an EO is a little bit outside of the assessment of the actual security of that system. And so that becomes something that gets folded into the secure customer configuration expectations and capabilities, and so it doesn't need to be in the KSIs. The KSIs are for assessing the security of the cloud service provider, not for assessing the features and capabilities that they provide to the agencies. I'm going to jump in on this next one. Is there, I think there might be a couple that are kind of wrapped up with this. Is there an option for a CSP that has a FedRAMP moderate equivalent to use those audits instead of getting another audit? The answer to that is no. FedRAMP 20X is an entirely different process from Rev 5. You can go the Rev 5 route and finish that audit and go through that and get yourself an agency sponsor and get agency authorized and become FedRAMP authorized via the Rev 5 route, or you can rebuild to the 20X route. At the moment, I would generally just no business advice, but if you're invested in Rev 5 and you've got good setup there, just wait and see what happens with 20X over the next few months until there's tools, capabilities, et cetera, that are available. It's really not a good idea if you have done everything for Rev 5 to just throw that out and try this new thing that's still being built. Dan, I'll hand this next one back to you. You want to answer it?
Yeah, so very related to what Pete just said, could ISVs with an existing or pending Rev 5 moderate or high authorization submit for a 20X low authorization to validate their 20X approach? The answer is definitely yes, you certainly can. Would the 20X submission be redundant? I mean, technically, yes. But if what you're interested in is, hey, I have approach for 20X and I want to see if it, makes sense, then definitely there's value in going forward with that. As Pete said, if you've already got a comfortable Rev 5 solution in place, it might not be might not be the best use of resources to also spend a lot of time working on a 20X approach. The Rev 5 stuff isn't going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah, just hold on. Just calm down. A couple months, you'll have a lot more clear picture of whether or not you want to make that business decision and how. There's a couple questions here about agencies and how agencies are dealing with these changes and how 3POs are dealing with these changes. Those are two very different things and they're different scenarios. I'm going to talk about them really quick. Yesterday, I spent all day at RampCon, hosted by Coalfire, lots of communication with 3POs, et cetera. We have tons of 3PO participation. We have 3POs that are incredibly excited for innovative business models. I think the reality is that most of the people at a 3PO generally are the people that will tell you they do not want to sit in a room and go AC1, AC2, AC3. And so we are finally giving them the opportunity to approach this as real technical discussion, technical argument. And they're looking forward to figuring out how they can build businesses around that. Agencies, whole different thing. Our approach for this is based on a lot of complicated things. I'm not going to spend half an hour going through all of our authorities, the law, et cetera. I'm just going to a high level. FedRAMP changed in 2022 when the FedRAMP Authorization Act was passed. We were giving very, very unique and special authorities to develop a process and an approach that agencies are required by law to follow. M2415 was published just under a year ago that doubled down on that, directed us to make these changes, to execute these, and to make them available to agencies and for agencies to follow them. As you know anything about policy in government, there is a long policy follow-on period. The law was 2.5 years ago. M2415 was a year ago. We're just starting this now. So agency adoption, are agencies looking forward to and excited about having a quicker, easier, cheaper, more secure process to monitor and use cloud services? 100%. Are there some agencies, like the Department of Defense, that are very nervous about the idea of changing the way that they do things? 100%. So as we move forward with this, our job is to create this process, make sure that the FedRAMP board, the Office of Management and Budget, the CISO Council, all these people are on board with us. They're on this journey, and they will push this out to agencies to make sure there's agency adoption. Right now, our mission, our priority is focused on developing and building this capability so that when we bring it to agencies, it's not a thing that we're just talking about. We want to have authorized CSPs. We want to have proven system security plans, proven approaches with audits for them to start using. We are clearing the way, and we're first movers in this space, like building a product for agency adoption. So our agency adoption play lags behind this. But we are working with the liaisons. We're going to have a big all hands at the White House in a couple of weeks with a whole bunch of people from agencies. Like, basically, don't worry about agency adoption. We got that. OMB has that. That's what we're here for. This is really only 30 minutes today. We don't have time to
I
get through all
know.
of these.
I'm flagging that I think it's fine to go like a little over,
Yeah,
but
we'll
like
go a little over.
if you guys need to go, as I said, the recording to this call will be posted, and if we don't get to any questions, we'll think about posting something in the discussions forum.
Perfect. Yeah, before you jump, 2 weeks from now, we are going to do an hour-long session with a panel with a bunch of participants in the pilot, where we're going to ask them questions about what their experience has been like, what they've learned, what problems they've encountered, et cetera. I think that's going to be really insightful for us, and it's going to be incredibly insightful for you, instead of just hearing us talk about vibes and feelings and hopes and dreams. So be ready for a longer one in 2 weeks, and obviously we'll post the video about that as well. Let's go through here. Will the Rev 5 path be sunset at some point in favor of 20X? Yes. You should 100% expect that that path will go away. Will it be 3 years, 10 years, 30 years? I don't know. Right now, the mission is not to shut that down until we can replace it. But why would anyone use the Rev 5 path when they have a better 20X path? The only reason to go Rev 5 is because it works. You know how it's there and it covers everything. In 2 to 3 years, we should see no new entrants into Rev 5, and then it will just be a matter of people switching over to 20X as they have business reasons, justifications to do it. And maybe there will be some decisions made to kind of accelerate that. There's another question here about 3POs and significant change requests. And I think I'm guessing from context, that's probably more for the Rev 5 working group down the road. Oh no, CMK. Oh, sorry, this is specific to 20X. We're going to publish the new significant change notification standard soon. It's going to walk through the scenarios in which that needs to be done. The main thing is that if you have a change that isn't covered by your KSIs that does introduce a change to the risk to the AO, then that needs to be reviewed. We need to make sure that your changes are actually tested. If your change uses a 3PO tested verification test, then it doesn't need to be reviewed by a 3PO. So if you're using the same automation that's already been proven to work and you're using that to prove that your SCR didn't affect something, then you're good. And we'll work through that in the pilot. Ben, you want to answer the next one? That's a big one.
Yeah. So the question was, NIST 853 is explicitly non-prescriptive with regard to how to implement controls. What is 20X's approach? So, I mean, 20X's approach is much the same, right? When you see a KSI, I'm looking at one now that says KSI PIY03, maintain a vulnerability disclosure program. What does that mean to you as the CSP? And the validation of that is just you working with your 3PAL to present the evidence for that KSI. And because you're part of the pilot program, you can establish what that means. And if you make your case, you could, that's the validation, right? If you can convince us with the evidence you have and the disclosure program you have, it doesn't have to be the 30-day Kanban meetings and POAM sheets and so on. It can be what you shape it to be, as long as it makes sense logically, from a assessment standpoint, from an auditor standpoint. If it's what you want, it's what you shape it to be. So that's the validation.
Yeah, the whole, this is one of these kind of fascinating things. So we're delivering this like product, like private sector technology, incrementally, rapidly. Then we're doing continuous testing and evaluation with it hands-on by people that are using it. So we don't have an answer for you right now about how we're going to approach validation, because we don't have anything to validate. So that is literally the reason why the pilot exists, is how does this work? How does the industry do it? How does the industry want to do it? How does it make sense? How do we learn from that? Like, what are the capabilities? And instead of us sitting around for 2 years in a room asking questions, doing theories, writing together white papers, we're actually saying, hey, we're building this, and people are building it. So then we see what is the effect of having built it that way. Does that make sense? Get a bunch of people together. Yes, no. That one, the first one we get, maybe not so much. The second one, ooh, that looks better. And eventually we'll refine towards something that works. And that is what will become our official process. I think that is probably a good place to end it for now, since we're 5 minutes over. We don't want to go too crazy. But you've got the forums. They're there. We're there 24/7. Go post your questions there. Anyone can see them. You can post them anytime. You don't have to be in a meeting. And stand by for a very exciting working group discussion. That's a lot longer, a lot more time to cover a lot more stuff with folks in 2 weeks.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. And we will all see you in 2 weeks. Have a great day.